Hello and welcome to the new videocast. My name is Eric Young, Chief Technology Officer here at Nubank, and today I'm joined by Rohan Ramanath, who leads our core AI team. Together, we're really excited to give you a behind-the-scenes look at one of Nubank's most strategic priorities, AI. Specifically, we're going to talk about how AI is being used to transform our ways of working, everything from software engineering to fraud screening to credit underwriting. It's a pretty packed agenda. We're also going to give you a preview of how we're evolving our product to take advantage of these new capabilities. So Rohan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Eric. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm really excited to get your take on what David mentioned on our investor call. He gave us an idea that we're going to treat AI as a superpower at Nu. I'd love to learn more about how you think about AI, specifically with regard to adoption versus transformation in your organization, Core AI.
I think it's an interesting question, and it is something that across the industry we've been discussing quite a while. And for me personally, adoption is how do you do something faster? Just take your existing stack, add AI to it, and then what happens, right? Transformation is slightly different, right? It's if AI can do most of this job, then what is the job? And I think it's really easy to say that on the macro level, like what does that mean to your product? What does that mean to engineering? It's slightly different. I can give you a trivial example, like across the industry today, when you think about lending products, there are tens of products that are surfaced to our customers today. And the job is really for the customer to now figure out what is the right product for them, and then pick and choose the right product for the right moment and the right situation. Now, adopting AI is cross-selling these products and adding an AI agent on top of that stack and then keeping the exact workflow the same. But transforming AI is, if you now know that AI can pick the best product, what should you know about the customer to enable AI to make the right decision? If AI can ask the customer, hey, AI already knows how much money you make and where you spend and what your fixed expenses are, none of that is going to change. So how much money do you really need and what do you need it for? If AI can gather all of that context, then recommendation just becomes a feature, right? So how do you transform the product to now offer that capability in your app? That to me is product transformation. Now, on the engineering side, like copilots and auto assists have been around for a while. But if you were to go into an era of long-running sessions where most of that code gets written autonomously, what are the other systems that you need in place to be able to write bank-grade software? So in the worst-case scenario, nothing goes wrong, right? So that, to me, is transformation.
You know, it's really exciting to kind of see that, and we look across the company, we also see the same behaviors playing out across all disciplines. You know, we see the fact that there's a lot of technical capability brought forward by adopting AI, co-pilots, chat assistants. It's all offering incremental value. But this transformative capability, to your point about rethinking the workflow, rethinking the process to be AI first, is super transformative and super powerful. And we see many, many of the teams internally, as you highlight, everything from software engineering to product design and development, rethinking their workflows end to end. And when I look at this, you know, it's not too far different than Nubank's origin story. You know, the company set out to reinvent banking, and it didn't do that just by digitizing the branch. It decided that it was going to take a first principles approach to deciding what banking should be in the future. And the approach is quite similar right now in this moment with AI. We're not trying to simply optimize our existing workflows in banking with AI. We're trying to reinvent all of banking using an AI-first approach. And I think you get to a very different outcome when you take that kind of first principles ground up thinking. And as you're aware, this is a deeply focused and personal endeavor for our founder, David. He's very much looking at this moment as one where the energy, the focus, the commitment that you expect to see from everyone in this moment is there about redefining a future, setting a new standard, a new normal for us to follow. And I'm sure many of the incumbent banks will try to do the same. They're going to try to, embrace the technology and see the incremental gains that you get by just adopting it. But the level of transformation that's possible in this moment that we're seeing in many areas of the business is truly remarkable. And I see the inspiration in the engineering organization, the product and design and development, in fact, all of the new bankers across the stack. For us, I look at the opportunity as saying there's tremendous power when you have a very low cost structure, very large data sets to completely reinvent and redefine a deeply personalized experience for new bankers and for the actual customers that are on our platform. So it is this exciting moment. It's one of transformation, both in how we work and the products that we build. And I think we're going to see many, many great things in the months ahead as we start to ship this feature.
I think it's definitely a difference in experience, not just a faster one. And the results, it's going to show up in the results, not in better demos, right? And I think doing it and we say this internally a lot, it's not about incrementally better, it's about fundamentally different. And I think this is one of those moments in history where it's going to transform how we work.
I love how you say that too. It's the combination of velocity, cost structure, product innovation, the level of personalization that you can expect in the app. There's just so much more that you can do that wasn't possible before. And it's a truly exciting moment. Maybe shifting gears a little bit, you obviously lead our AI core organization. It's transformative in terms of how we do credit underwriting in terms of many different applications of AI. Can you share a little bit more around how you think about the work we do in credit? Is this about driving top line growth, or is it about managing cost structures and minimizing risk? And I ask that question because I always think by default that this is about minimizing risk and preventing losses, but I'd be curious to know if you actually see a growth story behind this work as well.
Okay, that's a great question. For context to our listeners and our audience, Newformer is a proprietary foundation model that's trained on Nubank's data. The key insight from this work is that this model is a lot more precise because you're making decisions at a lot more fine-grained level than the models of the past, which were making coarse decisions. And with precision comes inclusion and profitability at the same time. And so the answer to your question is we're doing both, right? We're driving growth responsibly and by driving inclusion. Now, in the last year and a half, Newformer has been integrated into, I would say, the most important model for Nubank. It is our single largest segment, the mass market segment within our largest market, the Brazilian market. And it is the model that is responsible for our limit increase program, which is among all of our members that have credit cards today, who should we increase credit limits for, and by how much should we make that limit increase? That's the decision that the model is driving. And the key insight here, again, is better models just don't reduce losses. They allow us to safely and responsibly extend credit to a larger number of people, and that's inclusion and profitability with one move. Now, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're just getting started. We're expanding this to personal loans, to Mexico, to Colombia. We have a lot of products, and Newformer can serve all of those products today. Now, I'm most excited about our experiment velocity. Like, we've set up a lab internally, which effectively has made experimentation free. What that means is a new research paper gets released on arXiv. We can point our lab to that arXiv paper. It downloads the paper, tests the ideas on our model, on our data set, tells you how well it does, and it gives you a sense of, is this worth productionizing or is it not? This used to take us 3 to 6 months in the past because code can have errors and experimentation is hard. And today we can do it in a day. And so our experimentation velocity in the last 18 months, it looks like a completely different industry today. And so that's something I'm super excited about.
It's really exciting just to see the investment in the experimentation-driven culture, the progress the team is making by integrating like off-platform key learnings, testing them internally, and building the harness that we're able to get those results back quickly. I know many on the call are probably wondering right now with regard to this growth story of credit. Like, are we just loosening the underwriting standards? Are we taking on more risk as part of this growth story that we're not expecting? And how do you think about the governance to control effectively bias in the models or governance or auditability? How do you think about that in terms of the controls you put in place as you test some of these new ideas out?
I think that's a fair push. When I think about whether we should make the limit increase or not, we don't make the limit increase because the model says we can. A lot of the governance is because of the framework around it. And we increase the limits when we think that the risk-adjusted economics support it, right? And so anytime we make a credit limit decision, our true north is at that NPV. Does this make sense on a risk-adjusted basis for us to increase the limits? And then we do it, right? So a few things to understand here. If we zoom out of Newformer gives us a better signal. It doesn't tell us what to do. The risk and business are two different entities, and they have different objectives, and that tension is a feature, not a bug. That tension is required for the business to sustainably grow. And so that's two different sides of the story, and we want to keep that separate, and that tension is what drives our equilibrium. Now, there are 3 pieces of this framework that allows us to set the right governance, right? The first is what is the rituals that we have before every model launch? The second is how do we think about fairness? And the third is how do we think about model explainability? And all 3 are important. We cannot do without any of them. On the governance piece, Newformer is like every other credit model, it's a tier one model. So it's not that we saw the offline metrics, we think this model is doing great, we should just launch it and make limit increase decisions. Every input, every behavior, and every change to the segments are recorded and tested by the second line of defense risk teams, independent of the team that developed the models themselves. That was what was happening before. That continues to happen now. Just because we have a different way of determining signal doesn't mean we change the governance and the framework around it. So all of that remains the same. The second is on the fairness, right? Like we have explicit mandates that every model we build, both in the pre-release as well as the post-rollout testing, the models being tested for resilience both on different economic cycles as well as customer segments. And we want to make sure it's unbiased on both. And it's not just optimizing for a better predictive fit. And this is important in the development phase as well. And the third is explainability, right? This is something that we've rolled out as part of NewScore. It's like a customer-facing feature which translates the output of the model into something that the customer can understand and interpret. And it's not an afterthought for us, right? So as we design each signal into the model, we're also thinking about, okay, how does this show up if the customer wants to increase their NewScore or increase their odds of getting approved? And so explainability is not just something for us to convey to the regulator or convey internally. It is something that we want to bring the customer into on this journey so that we're as transparent as we can on how we underwrite.
It's really helpful context, and as you kind of highlight, like as you build a more sophisticated model architecture, it may be harder to explain certain decisions at the margin. But what I hear is this approach effectively of like understanding how to separate out like model prediction from risk appetite is kind of a core part of the architectural governance. So when we think about how to make credit decisions, you may predict various sort of prediction heads in your model, things about spend, the severity of default, risk appetite. But ultimately, the risk appetite itself is informed by the policy layer. And so as you think about if macroeconomic conditions were to worsen, the policy layer would adapt, and effectively we would put further bounds on credit decisioning and therefore be able to still make the high confidence predictions we make now, but adjust the business strategy to adapt. And this kind of two-level architecture approach helps us design systems that are able to bound based on business parameters that we set independent from the model. And then I also like this comment about a separate organizational structure, two-tier risk, effectively having a separate team with separate accountability and structures, separate incentives to ensure that they have a focus on auditing the model while we continue to have a research team focused on pushing the boundaries of pioneering the next type of model architecture.
I think that's really well put, right? If you think about humans are making the business decisions on a risk-adjusted basis, they are best calibrated to decide risk, and the AI or the model is giving you much more precise signals. And I think those two sides are really important. Now, we spoke about Newformer, we spoke about credit. That's been top of mind for us, but that's only one place where we're using AI across the company, right? And so from your vantage point, what are some of the other areas where we're seeing tangible gains as a business? What are some things that we're bullish about when you think about AI impact to a financial institution?
A great question. I mean, you hit the first one, obviously. We are using it extensively in credit, 27 different credit models rolled out, more and more rolling out as we go into new markets, new products, new geos. But beyond credit, we see broad adoption. We see it actually extensively in terms of how we work. So software engineering, product development, they're all evolving. We'll talk maybe more about that later. But internally, on the business processes that we run, fraud's a great example. We can take transactional data with behavioral insights and then try to figure out how to use that data to make higher confidence predictions to keep user accounts safe, their data secure, and ultimately their account access appropriately restricted just to them. And it's not just about keeping it secure, it's about minimizing the amount of friction that we expose them to. So minimizing the amount of step-up verifications and authentication that we expose them to because we have higher confidence in our risk predictions. That's a way that we focus on trust and safety, but also making certain that it's customer convenience. Beyond that, we're looking at it very closely in terms of like deposit yield pricing. The idea that customers have different intents and purposes for their cash. So if it's transactional balances to clear funds, that's something where customers want the convenience of transactability. They're not expecting a higher yield. But investment balances, those are areas where customers are very sensitive to what the value is they're getting on their return. And so by focusing our deposit yield pricing on the areas that customers value it most, we're able to keep our cost of funds low across the platform, which allows us to offer great returns on the rates that we can offer in our credit products to all customers. And this is a way that we create great balance in the ecosystem and also that leading efficiency ratio that drives the great products we can offer. Beyond that, we're seeing some really interesting pilots in the collection space. So customers often find it easier to chat with AI about these sensitive situations where they're maybe not able to make ends meet for a given month, and they need to figure out how to come up with a new payment plan. And AI is non-judging. It's there to help you. It's there to help work through these scenarios, and it's able to help you put together various repayment scenarios. And what we find is that the customers who go through this workflow get better informed. They come up with a plan that works for their financial means, and then ultimately they have a higher follow-through in actually making those follow-on payments. It kind of gives them the agency and control to come up with a plan that works best for them in a manner that's accessible 24/7 to them. So there's a lot happening here, and even more happening behind the scenes in terms of just how we build software and build products. But it's an exciting moment for all of us, for sure. Well, by the way, let's talk about what's possible in terms of reinventing the customer experience. In an earlier video cast, I spoke about, I think it was called the Tech and AI segment. I spoke about how we're trying to pursue this AI private banker and the idea that we want to build something that's accessible to all of our users and provide a completely new form factor for interfacing with the customer and the product experience. How do you look at what's possible right now in terms of this technology and what we can do to advance effectively the user experience through new tools and tech?
I think this is a very, very interesting take on the financial product. It's called AI Private Banker. Internally, it's a set of AI capabilities that we're packaging together on our app to help our customer organize their finances, make the right credit decision, manage better debt. And the framing matters here because Private Banker, historically, it's been a luxury good, right? It's usually the wealthy clients, six-figure balances. But for us, the more interesting question was, if you package personalized financial advice to someone in a low or moderate income household, the incremental value of a better financial decision is much higher. And what kind of financial advice would you give someone is also a much more challenging problem to actually answer. This population is historically has had much worse financial products and almost no advice. And AI is changing the economics required to address this advice layer, right? And so that's the problem that we want to solve. We believe it's going to be a genuinely new outcome in consumer finance. It's not just going to be a feature on the app. And so it is, if you think about the different skills that this financial advisor would need, we've been independently testing each of those skills scattered through our app over the last 6 to 12 months, right? And it's been used by 15 million monthly active users. At least one of these features are being used on the app today, and we've still been honing in on the quality. The reason quality matters even more for this kind of a product is it's easy to build a toy in this space. It's hard to build something that genuinely works almost always because we don't want to erode the trust factor. When I say you don't need a PhD in financial engineering to make your weekly financial decisions, I also mean that the more I get my advice right, the more you're going to trust me. And the consequence of me making a mistake are going to be higher every time I give you the right decision, right? And so we are polishing the edges of the quality of our answers. What does it mean to make financial advice to someone that's making barely they're making ends meet, they're living paycheck to paycheck? How many financial decisions do they have in a month? What is the consequence of each of those decisions? Even if we can recommend incrementally one better decision in a month, if we can simplify some of the more complex transactions that they make on the app with a simple conversation, will it increase their confidence of the types of financial products they buy? These are some of the questions that we're trying to answer with this product, but it's coming soon. As a packaged product to our mass market segment.
What I love about what you said is that Nubank has always really been about financial access and financial inclusion. And the comment about not needing to have an advanced degree in finance to take control of your financial lives and financial destiny is really powerful. And it kind of goes back to this theme about using technology to eliminate complexity and provide access to others. And I think our AI Private Banker journey is just that, giving people the financial independence, the tools that understand deeply, their intent. Like, what are they trying to solve? What's their financial situation? What's their understanding of financial literacy? And then be able to match the format with their sophistication in this field, and in a way that helps them make better decisions in everyday life. So super exciting. As you highlight, coming soon, I want to kind of stress that there's a lot of investments happening on this front, and it should be something that will be continually rolling out in our app, and we'll continue to see a new experience. But for me, what makes me most exciting is to build that experience. You've got to have a great cost structure so you can offer great products. Without a great cost structure, there's not a compelling customer value proposition. You don't have the right yields on deposits. You don't have the right interest rates to offer. And so the combination of both the leading cost structure with a very clear big data set to deeply personalize the experience allows us to create like a really rich offering. So a lot more to come on this front in the coming sessions ahead, and hopefully more to share in some press releases to launch soon.
Absolutely.
Well, I mentioned data, and this leads into my next question. You've obviously come from Hyperplane. You've seen kind of what the industry data sets look like in the financial services area. I'd love to learn a little bit more around how you see our data set, how it's able to differentiate the product experience, and where we go from here.
I think before joining New at Hyperplane, we had the privilege of working across the industry, many financial institutions, and the difference was immediate and striking when we spoke to New. And it's not just about the number of customers. I think everyone knows over 100 million customers. It's also the depth and density. And what I mean by that is about 60% of the Brazilian customers today use New as their primary financial institution. And this means we don't see a slice of their financial life. We see a complete view. It is not just transactionality. It is their savings, their investments, sometimes insurance, credit behavior. All of that shows up, right? Now, outside of the data, outside of the AI and what's possible with the technology, I think one thing that attracted us to New was the combination of scale, data richness, and a leadership team that understood that AI was not just a feature. It was that next structural layer of business. And we wanted to make sure from a culture fit perspective, the team around us were well aligned in how we saw the world. And I think it's been 20 months. And I would say that the Hyperplane team has been so well integrated into what we've been doing. We're moving super fast. And I think it talks about Nubank's culture of experimentation, the data centricity in how we make decisions, as well as like a very low bureaucracy environment, right? We're truly truth-seeking in the types of decisions we want to make, and we want what is best for the customer. Not just what one person wants, but that's what the whole company wants. Speaking of which, I think AI talent, you would agree, is one of the scarcest resource in the world today. The Hyperplane team came from Google, Meta, Apple, Microsoft. And you joined us from Snap, where you led engineering for them. And so how do you see New's talent bench today and New's talent proposition going forward?
It's a great question. I think if you look at building leading teams in this research field, you kind of want the combination of the talent, the data you just spoke about, and the culture that you kind of highlighted brought a lot of your team to Nubank originally. And specifically with regard to talent, like this is an area where Hyperplane acquisition was both for IP and talent, the leading researchers, people who are pushing these frontier model development. And what we've seen is that skill set is now proliferated across the company. It's more than just Hyperplane, it's the broad organization, everything from machine learning researchers and engineers to data scientists to business analysts. All these functions are kind of embracing this latest set of skills and helping us advance our research and our models. And what we've been really excited about is being able to apply this team to continued research in areas even beyond just credit modeling and credit decisioning. It's been super exciting to work with your team and a lot of reinventing the software development lifecycle using AI-first harnesses and building the agentic coding agents. So we see just broad applicability of the skill and continued growth of it in the company. Our value proposition to them is you get to come to a company that has a leading data set, 131 million users, all online in terms of a format. So great data coverage and data access. But we also have the ability to invest deeply in problems, but it's not a crowded space. You can move fast, you can have an impact, and we're continuing to hire in these fields, specifically in the Bay Area as well. So it's a pretty exciting moment for us. So a lot of excitement, a lot of energy around what we can do in this moment, and I think you're going to see a lot more from us in terms of what's possible as we push the envelope, both in terms of how we work, but the experience we ultimately deliver in the app for our consumers.
So switching gears a little, talking about AI transformation and then reshaping how we do our work, what products we build. You've been tracking adoption metrics pretty closely with AI tools and how we're thinking about the transformation. What are you seeing, and how do you expect this to show up in our operating leverage as a company?
You know, it is exciting. Like, we want to make this be a company where it's the best place for builders to build. And we're actually expanding the definition of builder at Nubank. It's not just the engineering roles that were traditionally seen as the builders. We're looking at all functions to really have the right tools, the right access, the right base setup, so that they're able to effectively build solutions in terms of like vibe-coded implementations of new ways of work, process and workflow transformation, but also in terms of experimenting with the app, like prototyping new design concepts. And so the first thing we look at is, how do we get the whole workforce equipped with the right access and tools? And so we've given everyone in the company access to Claude. They all have the ability to go access and prototype solutions for their own workspace, but also for like our app, and to be able to demo products. And effectively, the best example I saw, I know you were in the room with me when our CEO was trying to articulate a new vision he had for a particular product we're working on. And he decided he was going to vibe code in the session without telling us. And then, 45 minutes in, he comes back and says, "This is what I want." And I was just like, in a moment, I'm like, wow, that's our app. And it was our app using back-end Clojure microservices, the front end using Flutter, which is exactly our tech stack, and using our latest version of the design standard. And it was a very fast way of articulating a point of view in a design that helped the team align, and that would have taken weeks before. So it is truly an exciting moment where a lot more is possible, and traditional definitions of what roles did is being completely reshaped. And that, I think, is exciting, particularly in engineering, because it allows us to elevate the work we've always done. Engineering's always been more than just trying to implement the code. It's been about designing systems, capturing intent, testing hypotheses. Design has always wanted to be able to see what their product is going to look like in the hands of an actually implemented experience. And so this is all now possible because the tooling is allowing functions to go broader and deeper. And this is an exciting capability. But beyond just tracking adoption, we really want to see impact. And we're trying to measure where we're seeing improvements in velocity, in terms of throughput, in terms of productivity. And we're seeing some really great stories beyond the metrics. We're seeing a destination architecture refactoring of our tech stack. That was supposed to take us all the way into halfway through 2027. And a team of engineers working on this came back and was like, you know what? We found a way using the latest Claude models to be able to effectively refactor this and be ready to launch it in June. That's like almost a full year acceleration of an actual roadmap item. But there's countless stories. I know we were both on a Slack channel called AI Superpower at New. It has thousands of people who subscribe to it, and every day there's this energy of what people have been able to do. Sometimes it's stretching the boundary of what they've done in the past, but other times it's accelerating roadmap items that were in our backlog that we didn't have a chance to address. And so the gains are real, and it's really encouraging and inspiring to see just how much our engineering community and broader company are leaned forward in transforming the way that we work. The last thing I'll highlight is that when we look at the power of AI and the power of transformation, we're reinventing workflows at the company. Like, we're not just using this to digitize or automate an existing process. We're going back to first principles and saying, in an AI-first world, an AI-native world, how would you reimagine the process? How would you reimagine the job function? And that allows us to think broadly about what would change. And it's great to see the energy of the entire organization leveraging these skills focused towards this transformative outcome.
I think 2026 is definitely the year where the CEO gets back into the code base, and David's really checked that box hard. I think two things that I feel like as part of this transformation, it is changing how our organization communicates, right? Because one of the hardest things with large organizations is what I say and what you hear might not always be the same thing, but as switching into like these prototype-driven PRDs has really made a difference to how we communicate concepts, ideas, starting from the CEO down. And I think as we think about engineering and how we design backends, we were in a world where all of our backends were consumed by the one front end that they had a contract with. But we're moving to that world where almost every backend is thinking about themselves as a banking as a service provider, where they're building capabilities that tomorrow could be called by an agentic interface. So these are like truly different product directions that we'd not thought of before.
Totally. It's an exciting moment.
So the last time you did one of these episodes about tech and AI, you were just arriving at New. Both internal and external scenarios were pretty different in the world of AI. Tell us about what's changed in the past few months.
Wow, I mean, it's been a wild time. It's been great. What I'd say is that New moves incredibly fast, and the industry is also moving fast at the same time. And so I think a lot of the predictions that AI was going to reshape the nature of the product and the nature of the way we work, that all, of course, is very true, and it's playing out. But it's playing out about 10 times the speed that I think any of us could have imagined. For us, one of the biggest breakthroughs internally was the Sonnet 4.5, Opus 4.6 model releases back in December. And these are game changers. And I highlight that because a lot of our backend code is written in Clojure. And prior models were just not effective at writing Clojure code. And that really kept us out of being able to fully harness the power of this technology. And now we're at a moment where we're all in and we're seeing the gains. And in fact, the adoption rates, the level of productivity that we see, the velocity on the engineering side, these are all making measurable improvements, kind of per those examples that I gave. And so it's a truly, truly exciting moment. But perhaps most inspiring is just seeing how the community across the company is reacting. Like, people are all in on this moment. They're excited. They see it's a way to rehome their profession. If you're in engineering, if you're in other areas of the company, there's a lot more tools and capabilities that you can do that elevate your craft. And I think this is a moment where you want to be working and you want to be in this area to have an opportunity to, again, focus on building. And the transformative power of AI is incredible, and we're moving incredibly fast in this moment. What do you see as the big risks and opportunities for next steps for us?
It's a very fair question. And I think today, the size of the opportunity is far larger than the risks to Nubank itself. And we arguably are one of the few financial institutions well positioned to embrace what AI is going to change in financial services. And I say this for three reasons, right? If you think about our RPAC, it's about $15 per month, and incumbents are at about $40. And I think this gap, AI can help close, specifically personalization, cross-sell, private banker, a more connected ecosystem to truly find the best decision for the customer are all investments to help close that gap. The second is, today, if you think about profit pools, 95% of financial services profits are still concentrated with the incumbents. And that is the size of the prize. And all of those banks are still operating at significantly larger cost structures. And I truly believe AI is going to help shape a different type of cost structure now, significantly better than what going from physical retail branches to digital did 10, 15 years ago. And the competitive moat in AI is three things. It's data plus talent plus culture. And we have all three of them. It's not enough to have one, not enough to have two, and it's extremely hard to build three and even harder to sustain three. And I feel like what physical branches to digital banking, it almost gave everyone a clean slate to start with. Going from digital banking to AI banking, it doesn't give everyone that clean slate. There are a few players that need significant investments in data and infrastructure to even give them an opportunity to play. So I feel like we've gotten ourselves to a great point to start shooting the goal. And now it is on us to be able to land that vision and that dream into the reality, into our product, so that our customers can benefit it. So I'm far more excited about the size of the prize and the opportunity from here, more than the risk of how we can be disrupted by AI.
One last question, Rohan. What are you most excited about in the next 12 months that AI is going to bring?
Personally, Nuformer, I think getting Nuformer from where it is today to every major decision surface across the company, from credit, fraud, collections, pricing, it's not a model anymore, but it is the intelligence backbone of the entire company. If we can get there and get to a world where a new generation of Nuformer is released every month because we've closed that experimentation loop so much, that'll be a fascinating place. If I turn the question around to you, what are you most excited about?
I am excited about that as well, but I think the next 12 months are going to be wild, especially on the app experience side. I'm particularly excited about the deep personalization and bringing the actual customers the insights that are relevant to them without them having to even go search for it. I think it's going to completely shift the way that people interact with our app.
Private banker for the win.
There you go. Hey, look, it was great having you on the podcast today. Thank you to all of our listeners. We're super excited to spend the time with you. We'll be back again to share about what we've launched in the next episode. Until then, thank you so much for joining. It was great to spend the time with you today.
Thank you.